Hello, my name is Terry Taylor, and I'm the Printers Plan Implementation Specialist at PrintReach Software. In this video, I want to go over paper waste and waste calculations in Printers Plan, and we'll start off with the simple calculations on paper services, and we'll build in complexity up to the printer services and then our finishing services. This video is meant to be complementary to the service setup tutorial videos that we have, and then there will be another video that builds on this as well with our difficulty table video. Let's get started by navigating to our Services tab. And here I have my paper departments and categories opened, and I'm just going to click on my paper service that I have at the top of my list here. Alright, and if we look down in the pricing properties area, which is the main body of the service, we'll find our waste value for that service, and this service is set to waste table row 1 by default. And if I click on the left hand side here where I have my waste table button, this is where I can access our global waste table. So any service can reference this waste table as needed. And if you're just starting off, we typically recommend just starting off with waste table row 1 for testing. On this waste table, we have a row 0 at the top here that says impressions per run size sheet. And this is basically establishing the breaks for how the table below will read. And we have two kinds of waste being added in the table below. We have setup sheets, which is just a static number that's entered. So row 1 will add 10 setup sheets. And then we have a variable run waste quantity 2, which is based on our run quantity, and it's going to add a certain amount of waste. So if we have 1,000 impressions, we will have 5.7% of the run waste added to the material needed, so our output quantity is correct. We also have some limits that we can set for our bindery and other services, and that's done at the very bottom here in row 20, where I can set a limit in this column for my setup sheets, and then in this column next to it, I can set limits for my run waste. And then there's some notes at the very top of the window that remind us of this, as well as setup sheets are per paper for digital printers and per plate for offset presses. So once we have our waste set up in here, we can go do a test, and we'll close out of this and navigate to our jobs section. Let's switch to our jobs tab and demonstrate on a quote that I've already set up here. And I've just set up some basic items for testing. Let me full screen this and we'll investigate. We'll click on the first item, make sure it's highlighted. Then we'll click on the edit cost button just above. And then once we're in this screen, we're looking specifically for waste information, which isn't displayed in our cost window. So we'll have to highlight our paper material, make sure it's got the highlight to it, and then click quantity detail. In this quantity detail window, we're looking specifically at the information regarding waste. So we're getting all the information that this service is using to calculate all of its information. And it's currently telling us that our setup waste and our run waste is calculated based on the following equations. So we have 10 setup sheets, and that's just based on the 10 sheets we told it. And then we have run waste, which is based on a percentage and our quantity. So now that we have the core calculations of the waste table down, we can look at other services and how they can add and calculate waste. I can close these windows, and on my job screen, I can access the offset presses information just from this screen by clicking into the margin just to the left of the colored square. So for item 1, I'm using a 1-color press, and if I look in my waste area, it's set to use paper waste properties. So in this setup, this offset press is set to determine its waste based on however the paper material service is set up to calculate. And if I click into the drop down here, I still have access to the same options of no paper waste, using the global waste table, and then I have these other two options, use paper waste properties or use the following waste properties. To use paper waste properties, it's going to be referencing whatever our paper material is referencing, which in this case is Take a look here, click into the paper service, row 1. And I set it up this way to demonstrate how the calculations were working. Alternatively, I close out of this and go back to my press. In that drop-down, I have use the following waste properties, which this will still allow you to add a certain amount of setup sheets or percentage of the run quantity or both. This is going to use this generalized amount instead of the specified waste table row that's on the paper material service. So now we can close this and go look at our other example. Won't save any changes. So for my second item here, I have a press that's set to ignore my paper properties. So if I double click into the margin to open the service, in my waste area, it's set to the option use the following waste properties, and then it ignores the waste table or the papers options and just has a specified amount of setup sheets and a percentage of the run quantity listed on the service. So here I have 5 setup sheets and 2% of our run quantity. If I close out of this, I can view our quantity detail by selecting the item, clicking Edit Costs. In here we can see in our run quantity area our setup waste and our run waste, as well as some finish waste that's being generated by our finishing services. So there's further modification we can do to our presses and our digital printers. If I close back out of these and go back to my offset press, we can click on the left-hand side here. We also have a difficulty table. This is how each individual press can have its difficulty or its waste modified, built up upon the waste table's information. There's a separate video that we'll have outlining this information, so we're going to skip over that here. And the final waste topic that we haven't discussed yet is also being added in here, which is our finishing waste. So next we can close this and we can go look at our finishing service that's on our second item here to see how finishing services can establish waste. So this is my cutting service in this example, my default cutting service. And if I double click into the margin to open the service, here we see we're getting our waste option is set to additional paper waste, has 0 setup sheets, and it has plus 1% of our finished size quantity. Finishing services will calculate waste based on the finished size sheets, and that could cumulatively update the run size sheets and then ultimately the parent size sheets. So that's something important to look out for when you're trying to test your waste, is that you're calculating the appropriate waste at the point where the waste is actually happening. And in these waste options for my finishing or my other type services, other type can be identified from the header here, category type other. Most finishing services, if not all of them, are other type. We have very limited options here. We have no paper waste, and then we have just the additional paper waste option, which is our finished size sheet waste. So if we close out of this, we can go back into our edit cost window and our quantity detail. If we highlight our paper service, this is why we are getting the 1% based on the one part that we need to make sure that that's correct. And that will bring our paper waste video to a close here. We've covered our paper waste, our offset press waste, as well as our finishing services waste. And in the follow-up video, we'll discuss the difficulty table and how that can compound your waste as well. If you have any questions on any of this, you can check our knowledge base, support.printreach.com, and you can reach out to our support team at the email address support@printreach.com. Thank you for watching.